Welcome back to the Just Fantasy Baseball podcast. I'm on my couch. That means there's a baseball game on. I'm watching the Mets playing. Now, they're playing on Sunday Night Baseball. Severino just picked up his fifth strikeout against Luis Castillo, who's been dropping his nuts on the Mets all day. The New York Mets are now, I think it's the fourth inning. They've played 4 innings of this game, and then 9 innings plus 9 innings. That's 22 innings total. They haven't scored a run yet over the weekend in Seattle, and it's been 22 innings. Not great, because the object of the game is to score more runs than your opponent. And if you score 0, you can't score more than your opponent. How are you doing, Vince?
The Cubs eked out 2 wins against the White Sox, which was a little closer than I think it should have been, but that means I'm doing well. A win's a win, right? I mean,
Yep.
Can't complain. So, but I will complain.
Did you see your boy River Ryan is out for the year?
I did. Yeah, that was tough. There's some good news though. Verlander looks like he's coming back. Dio Hall finally came back. But yeah, River Ryan was a tough one. Sorry to hear that one.
Yeah, I have an interesting point that I want to make, and I don't know if it's fantasy related, but it is kind of fantasy related. What's the deal with good teams not being able to hold leads? I mean, the Orioles, Craig Kimbrell blows it today. Obviously, with the Yankees, between the kid Leiter that they got from Chicago, who gave up 3 or 4 runs in the 8th inning, and then Clay Holmes, the tying and winning runs were in scoring position by the time he got the final out after like 50 pitches in the 9th inning. And then also Atlanta, I don't know if you saw, they were up 6 runs in the 8th inning, and they lost. They were up 6 runs in the 8th inning, and they lost that game. There's going to be some wild blown leads in the postseason. Be prepared for this, because some of the best teams cannot figure out the end of games when it comes to their back end of their bullpens. And it's going to cause for some chaos in the postseason for Major League Baseball. Do good closers exist anymore? Are there any good closers?
Yeah, it's just kind of, it seems like it's a hot hand type of thing, right? Like if a guy's got a hot hand, you ride him for however long. I mean, it is wild how, and that's why we tell you at draft season, don't invest too much in relievers, because they typically volatile. Don't pan out, and they're so volatile. I mean, just think of, Chicago, Edward Alzolay. He was a lock last year, right? What the hell happened to him? You don't even hear from him anymore. So it's just, it's a wild landscape. It's ever changing. I don't know. Don't know what else to say about it, other than I will say though, Class A was I didn't realize how good he's the best in the league. Yes, it's just been unbelievable. I mean, 0.66 ERA and 0.66 WHIP is just unbelievable. Good for Sevy. Happy to see him back.
Yeah, Sevy. You know what's interesting? Last time out in Colorado, I was working that game for the radio, and I was like, he's having actually a really good game. It just a couple of things happened that didn't go his way, and it kind of changed the whole game for him. So I'm glad to see that he bounced back against a Seattle team that, look, I predicted that they'd be doing great. I predicted their offense would get going. But, a lot of people looked at this team, this Seattle team, as really, really good. But their offense isn't great. But I'm glad to see that Severino still against this offense, which is much improved than it was prior to the All-Star break. Obviously, talk about the addition of Turner, Rosarena. I like their offense a lot. Julio Rodriguez making his return from the IL today. So that's another headline. Julio Rodriguez is back. What other headlines are there? Do you have any?
Merrill Kelly's back. He threw 5 innings today, allowed 2.
And I do see another pitcher coming back, but I have him to stream a little bit later, so I don't want to mention him just yet.
Hold off on that one, yeah.
So yeah, I think we get into it with our waiver wire pickups. I have 2. Sure. So how many do you have?
I have 3. So I'll lead us off here.
Go ahead.
I do also want to mention too. I was thinking like we don't often go back and look at some of the predictions that we made and see how they panned out. I mean, we do
when they're good,
right? Well, this one is good. I did want to give a shout out to Parker Meadows. He's not in any of my categories this week, but called him out last week, and he's gone 13 for 26 since coming back. 5 multi-hit games. So happy to see Parker Meadows back. My first waiver wire guy, sticking with Arizona from Merrill Kelly, is Adrian Del Castillo, catcher for the Arizona Diamondbacks, who has filled in for the injured Gabby Moreno, who's out with a groin injury. Castillo is, again, we've talked about the catching landscape, and it hasn't been good. It hasn't been fruitful. And Castillo has filled in nicely, and he looks real comfortable. I saw him get into 2 strikes, and he was extremely confident. so far in 3 games, he's 7 for 12, which is .583. He's got a home run, 5 RBIs. He posted really impressive stuff at AAA. I think this is sustainable. So even if Moreno comes back, Castillo could still see some playing time. So again, with catcher being limited, I think Castillo is a guy that you should absolutely consider grabbing. I wouldn't expect it to continue at a .583 clip, .583 average, but at the same time, if he's going to continue to carve out at bats, I think that Diamondbacks team's getting better. We're seeing Carroll come back a little bit so far. We're seeing, when Christian Walker hopefully comes back, and they're playing well. So
yeah,
I would absolutely be looking to grab Castillo, even if I already had a good catcher, because again, sometimes catchers, they don't play every day. Maybe you find a couple days and get those extra couple stats, and Castillo's a good pick for now.
They just flashed something on the screen, which is why I didn't even know this. But if you're ever playing Immaculate Grid and you're looking for someone who played for Seattle and the Mets, how about Ricky Henderson? I didn't even know he played for either one of those teams. He played for both of those teams. Did you know that?
No. I'm so bad at Immaculate Grid. I'm so bad at knowing who
so
played
good
for,
at it.
I'm terrible.
I'm fantastic at this. Luis Castillo just got his 8th strikeout. We're in the top of the 5th.
Both of the guys dealing that.
I know, unbelievable. Yeah. That's what I was hoping for. So I talked about this with Vince before we started recording. So just to set the stage here, I have both of those guys on my fantasy team, and they're pitching against each other, and I'm down. Well, now I'm leading in strikeouts by far. I thought it was going to be a sweat. It hasn't been a sweat. But I need to get better in ERA, and I need one of them to get the win. So this is fun for me to watch that they're both, as now Castillo has struck out 5 consecutive Mets batters. So that's going back, struck out the side, struck out the batter to end the previous inning, and now he struck out a batter to start this inning, and he just gave up a single up the middle because that's how that works when you're talking about it. My first guy that I'm going to talk about to pick up off waivers is a guy that is a bigger name and a guy that a lot of people maybe don't look at as a fantasy value anymore, but they're also playing pretty well. They kind of half bought, half sold at the deadline. Weird situation going on as with a lot of teams, but that's Andrew McCutchen back in Pittsburgh. Riding while he's hot, maybe. The last, he's not going to get you a ton of home runs, but the last week he has a .554 on base in the last week, and then he had 2 home runs today. So he's got 3 home runs in the last week, and he's driven in 7 RBIs and has 4 runs scored. So Andrew McCutchen, obviously inflated numbers from today, but like I said, this has now been going on in almost 2 weeks. Where he has a .450 on base in the last 2 weeks. So this has been going on for a couple of weeks now. That Andrew McCutchen has been really hot for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So why not ride him for a little bit?
Yeah, it looks like he's going to be potentially their everyday DH. So good for him. We love to see it.
Yeah, and I love rooting for that guy. That guy's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've ever have those guys that weren't on your team, and he was on the Yankees at a point for a very brief time, but just one of those guys that even when he wasn't on your team, you were always rooting for him. There are some athletes like that. McCutchen was definitely one of those guys for me.
It was always tough because he was on the Pirates, but the Pirates
in division
the Pirates really haven't been good enough to where it's like, I hate you, McCutchen. Another one would probably be Yelich too, another guy in the division that similar feels where it's just you always root for them. And McCutchen's got 16 home runs so far this year, but 234 average doesn't look great. So he's, there's still some fantasy juice there. Absolutely.
And prior to today, he only had 2 in the last month. So maybe he's due to have a few more. So 2 today doubles the total that he had in the last month. So maybe, that power surge, ride that surge for the next week or 2. And then when he's not hot anymore, drop him.
I would say, though, avoid him maybe if you are in strikeout leagues where strikeouts hurt you, because he does have 5 strikeouts in the last 2 days. So, and, he just kind of seems like he's a little bit strikeout heavy. I don't have his rates in front of me, but just something to keep in mind to look out for. My next guy on the list, outfielder for the Washington Nationals, Alex Call, has been absolutely scorching hot.
I did see that, yeah.
And with James Wood being hot, I thought about throwing James Wood on here. Well, not on here, but in my who's hot earlier this week. But he's been hot. Dylan Cruz is obviously coming up at some point. That's the future of the outfield there. But Call is doing his best to try to carve a role. And I'm not really expecting this one to last, but if you look at his last 6 games, every single game has been a multi-hit game. He's been 13 for 28 in that span, 6 RBIs and 4 runs. There's no power here, though. Maybe some speed. He's got 4 steals in 20 games. An efficient run producer at best, considering he's hitting at the top of the lineup. But I love the xWOBA of 344. He's got a good 16% strikeout rate, 13% walk rate. He's putting up good at-bats. I love him for the short term. I'm not sure if it'll last, but again, you can't argue with 6 straight multi-hit games. He's absolutely crushing the ball. Go get Alex Call.
Yeah, and that's a good call. I'll give you that one. You see what I did there. Yeah, the Nationals, we talked about this so many times. Their young players are going to play, and so they're going to be riding the hot hand. Why shouldn't you? And so it's a good opportunity to go find something that a lot of these teams like to play spoiler. And another one of those teams is Oakland, right? Another team that's probably trying to play spoiler. You know, they know that their season's done, but unlike Chicago and the White Sox, who just bottomed out in April, it feels like the A's have something to play for. They have some sort of pride. And one of the guys who was thought of early in the year as probably a starting middle infielder and then really didn't pan out, but now is available on waivers and maybe he could kind of get back to where we hoped he would be coming into the year is Zach Geloff. He's 9 for his last 24, so that's pretty good. Getting on base a bunch, or actually, sorry, 8 for his last 24. 2 of them are homers, 4 RBIs, 4 runs scored, and 2 stolen bases. So, you know, I like looking at guys that we had higher hopes for them coming into the year and they were maybe underperforming. Maybe he finishes the season strong the last 6 weeks and you get a little lightning in a bottle with him. He's still only rostered in 35% of Yahoo leagues. And a lot of those leagues are probably people who drafted him and then forgot that he was even on there. I think most leagues probably did cut him after the poor start that he had to the year. But maybe he gets it going and we know it's in there somewhere. So maybe we see a little bit more of him going forward.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 15 home runs and 14 steals, so he could still potentially have a 2020 season.
Oh, for sure.
It's just the 201 average and the 266 on base throughout the
exactly.
season. We didn't expect that. So a lot of guys like that, and I don't have his BABIP in front of me, but a lot of guys who their BABIP has just kind of fallen off a cliff. And I have one later that we'll talk about, but I like that. Again, yeah, guys that we had higher expectations for that didn't pan out. Now, Rami, my next guy.
Yes.
If I had told you that this guy was going to have a hot stretch, I don't think you would have believed me, or maybe you would have, but maybe not to this extent. And I'm not even sure I'm going to go pick this guy up because, but it is Andrew Benintendi, outfield for the Chicago White Sox. Have you been following him? Have you been watching him? Have you been seeing what he's been doing?
The guy's a professional hitter when he's healthy. It's just he hasn't been able to stay healthy the last few years.
So the White Sox have 1 win in the last, I don't even know how long, I didn't write it down, but since July 31st, this is Benintendi's numbers. He's 11 for 35, which is a 314 average. And he's got 5 home runs, 11 RBIs, and 6 runs. That's 9 games. Season slash line of 211, 264, and 365, which is just disgustingly low. Like that's atrocious.
Well, he doesn't hit home runs.
But 5 home runs in the last 9 games.
Crazy.
I'm just saying I don't expect it to continue, but if you want to go grab him and ride it maybe a little bit, why not? Give it a week, see what happens. Benintendi's scorching hot right now. He's one of the best hitters in fantasy over the last week.
That's everyone. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for advantages at these points. So like you said, ride him while he's hot, and then all right, see ya. If he's if he starts to go poorly, that's kind of like where I am with everyone this week. Yeah. So
well, and you might get lucky, like some guys. I mean, Tyler Fitzgerald is one that I think a lot of people thought would cool off, and he's just still going. You know that you're going to find those guys all the time throughout the year. So keep it up.
So we are trying to do the same thing with starting pitchers, ride them while they're hot. And one pitcher who I think a lot of people moved off of because, and this is my streaming, my first one. I have 2. So do you have 3?
I have 2.
Okay, so I'll kick it off. A guy who I think a lot of people moved off of, and then he had a great start today, and his next start is against the Detroit Tigers over the weekend. So I think he should be in line for another great start. Marcus Stroman had a 7 ERA for the first few weeks. I think since June 1st, his ERA was 7. Coming into today's start, he gets pushed back to work on mechanics. I think it was like a mental health break / a little bit of a reset. We know he gets worn down as the season goes on. So they push back his start after the rain delay knocked him out of his start, meaning he didn't end up making the start because of the rain delay. So they ended up pushing him back and reserve him for later. And you know what? I think that's working out for him. I think he, it's only 1 game, but he had a really good start. The run he gave up was kind of lame. It was in the 6th inning when he came back out. They only pitched him 80-something pitches. So I think they kind of eased him back into it. If there's any place where he's going to go dominate and kind of look better, it would be Detroit, right? A soft landing spot for him after this game against Texas where he had another nice start. I expect him to have back-to-back really good starts. And if somebody for some reason dropped him in your league, do what I did. I already picked him up. I'm expecting a good start from Marcus Stroman.
Okay, I like it. I think I went a little deeper. So my first one is he's starting tomorrow against the Angels, and he's only rostered in 13% of leagues. And that is Bowden Francis, pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. And he's getting a shot to be part of the rotation for next year. So keep an eye out for him. If he has a strong end to the year, he could be a sneaky pick next year. But he showed good stuff. And his last start was against Baltimore, and he threw 5 innings, allowed 3 hits and 2 earned runs, including a home run to Anthony Santander, who doesn't give up home runs to Anthony Santander. But
I mean, he hits a ton of home runs.
That's just what he does. But the beautiful thing is 5 innings and 7 strikeouts to just 1 walk. So that's against one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in baseball, Baltimore Orioles. So his next start being against the Angels, this is, again, one of those ride him while he's hot. And again, if Toronto's considering him for their rotation, Toronto knows pitching. So I'm absolutely confident that, this guy's got a little bit of something in him. And the Angels aren't really a team I'm scared of right now. So I would absolutely be starting Bowden Francis, maybe with a little bit of strikeout upside, and hopefully starts your ratios off on a good start on Monday.
Yeah. And then my other guy, he's starting on Tuesday. And this is what I alluded to before. He's coming off the injury and making his first start in a while. And that's Taijuan Walker.
We got the same one.
Yep. Coming back to start against So when I said it before, you didn't think of it?
I think I was elsewhere. I don't know.
Talk about soft landing spot.
Yeah.
Miami. That's a soft landing spot. I like it a lot. And I think Taijuan Walker, we know that at his height, again, another guy like Geloff, like some of these guys that I like to talk about, at his height was a really good starting pitcher as recently as last year for Philly, 2 years ago for the Mets, right? Like at times, or is it 2 or 3 years ago, whatever it is, he's looked good. So I kind of expect that, fresh arm, because he hasn't pitched all year pretty much. I expect him to come back and be really good and be part of a winning team. And if he's going to stick in their rotation and they need starting pitching and they're going for trying to win a pennant, I'd expect him to be really good, and I expect them to lean on him. Maybe not, this week. Maybe there's a pitch limit or an innings limit, whatever it is. But like I said, it should be a pretty easy landing spot. It is the Marlins after all. But if he's good this week, I'd keep riding him as long as he's still good.
Yeah, his last rehab start too. I wrote it down: 5 innings, 1 earned run. They let him throw 60 pitches. So, again, maybe there is some sort of pitch limit, but if he can get to 75, 80, maybe there's 6 innings in there. Maybe that's a quality start. Maybe that's a win. And I typically don't love going for first starts after injuries, but the landing spot doesn't get softer. I mean,
exactly.
That's the whole reason. That's it. Miami's they have a horrible offense. And I trust the Phillies to put him in a good position to.
Right. You also trust exactly. The Phillies, they're trying to stockpile as many wins as possible. They're trying to go run away with that division. They're trying to go get the 1 seed if they can in the NL. So, the fact that they're starting him tells me that they think he's ready to be thrust into a postseason race. And so if they trust him, I trust him.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why he was on my list too. So completely
agree. I almost was going to put him on my waiver wire pickups as like a long-term. It was more of a long-term play than just, I'm not just streaming him this week, because if he pitches well this week, I want him long-term. This is not just a 1 week thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. Let's talk about our MVP of the week. And I didn't mention it earlier, but I was going to. But let's start with yours. Who's your MVP of the week?
We're going to keep it in Philly here. My MVP of the week, former Chicago Cub, Kyle freaking Schwarber. Now,
we love Kyle Schwarber.
We don't talk about him enough. So I do have a little bit of a spiel, but I'll start with just his hot stretch lately. Over his last 8 games, he's got 5 home runs, which was fueled by a 3 home run game. But he is quietly having like the best season of his career. Maybe that's because of Harper, Turner, Bohm, right? Like they're all having great seasons, but so far he's hitting 257, but a 388 OBP would be his highest of his career. And he's in the 99th percentile for walk rate at 17.2%. That is phenomenal for a leadoff hitter. And on top of that, he's on pace for a career high in runs and RBIs as a leadoff hitter. At 107 RBIs, that's what he's on pace for. 117 runs. I miss him on the Cubs. And I think this is what we wanted from Christopher Morel a little bit. Like, I think this is the guy that we wanted Morel to turn into a little bit. But Kyle Schwarber has been absolutely scalding hot over the last week or so. He's been the best fantasy player over that stretch over the last week. So props to Schwarber. He's my MVP this week.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mine, we talked about this. You just said it at the beginning of the podcast. We sometimes don't go back to our predictions. I'm going back to my prediction. I talked about Jorge Soler. I was in on him over and over and over again. I never stopped being in on him. Please, God, make that be an error. That should be an error on Lindor. There's no way that should be an earned run for Severino. Anyway, yes, I talked so much about Soler just this weekend. This is his weekend stats. Now, granted, it's in Colorado, but I mentioned that as a factor as well. 7 for 13 with 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 2 walks, and 5 runs on the weekend for Jorge Soler. If you didn't pick him up, I'm sorry. It's probably too late. If you didn't trade for him when I told you to, overpay for him possibly when I told you to, I'm sorry. It's probably too late. That's an earned run. It's a moonshot for Cal Riley. But yeah, Jorge Soler is my MVP of the week. Self-fulfilling prophecy, as I usually do.
We like that. Cal Raleigh's been another guy that I've absolutely loved
of the
to
year,
see.
baby.
25 home runs on the year, 73 ribbies. Good for him.
421-foot bomb.
Good thing he's hitting 216. We love to see the low average, high
power.
Well,
you love Kyle Schwarber, so
he's hitting 257.
It's unbelievable. This is a guy who, like, what was he, 198 last year?
I don't know, but even it's not even just the average; it's the on base. I mean, again, 17.
Well, that he's always had,
unbelievable.
I mean, he's one of those guys who his batting average is 200, but his on base is 400. It's like, how?
Yeah. I miss him.
All right, lock of the week. We have a lock of the week, and mine is very simple. I mentioned the Yankees are playing the White Sox and they're playing the Tigers. Like, it doesn't get easier than that for the Yankees. The Yankees, if they don't go 6-0 this week, there's something really wrong with them. Now they probably will go like 3-3, and I'll be furious. But they should go 6-0, and they should be led by Giancarlo Stanton. When he gets hot, he stays hot for a while. I don't know if you saw the home run he hit today. It had the same launch angle as Aaron Judge's RBI single earlier in the game. Yeah. How pathetic how hilarious is that? It was literally it was a pitch, a breaking ball that was at his shins, and he went down basically on a knee to golf it out, and it never got higher than, like, it was a wall scraper, but it was a bullet that went, like, you knew it was going out, and if there was no, like, seats there, like, it would have just kept going. Like, it probably killed someone in the outfield, in left field. Just the craziest home run I've ever seen. And when he gets hot, he gets hot. Now he has 2 home runs since coming off the IL over this weekend. And so for me, Giancarlo Stanton's going to keep it going against soft competition. And I love Giancarlo Stanton. He is my lock of the week.
I was trying to see if I could find an average or an exit velocity. It looks like it was 115. And yeah, you can tell. I mean, the pitch isn't even in the zone, and he just reaches down.
What was the launch angle?
It doesn't say, but it says the ball didn't get higher than 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Like, what?
Yes, Stanton hits them.
Oh,
like,
my God.
I watch Judge and Soto every day this year. Still, there's no one who impresses me more when he gets a hold of one than Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah, that's fair. God, I bet Marlins miss him too.
This is really pissing me off. This is 2 consecutive starts that Severino, like, deals with some BS in the middle of the start that ends up turning what would be a fantastic start. Like, come on. That's not, like, look, have better mental, fortitude that after the error, you don't give up the home run. But, like, come on.
Are you talking about the error from Lindor?
Yeah, but then after the error, he gives up the home run because Lindor makes the error. That the first run scores. Oh, wait, 6 seconds left. Be real. All right, we're good.
Be real. Oh, is that the be real? You still do that? Do people still?
Yeah,
do that?
I know. No one really does it. Everyone that I followed on the app, like, literally no one does it. But I still enjoy it. I do it because I like to have the front and back camera.
Sure, I think that's cool. Yeah, I think it's a cool thing. I'll jump to my lock of the week. We talked about it earlier. Guys who have underperformed all year, who maybe are coming back. This is a guy who was a top 5 pick this season. And I mentioned him earlier. Corbin Carroll has really turned it on. And a lot of people took him out of their starting lineups, but this week he better go back in, because in his last 7 days, he's 8 for 26, 307, which is impressive in and of itself. But finally, he's hitting home runs. He's got 3 home runs, which brings his season total up to 11. So 11 bombs on the season, 21 steals as well. Again, consensus top 5 pick this year. Do not forget about that. The shoulder doesn't appear to be bothering anymore. He's still putting up good at bats. And this was actually, I checked this and I thought it was pretty, crazy to see. His BABIP last year in 23 was 325. and 333 in 2022 in a short, stint there. But he's got a 247 BABIP this year. So again, do with that information what you will, but I just think that has to come up at some point. He hits the ball hard enough. He's obviously one of the fastest guys in the league. I think this is a turnaround potential time. Buy low, maybe, if somebody's willing to, sick of him, selling him, whatever. But I think, I'm not expecting him to go on this huge power binge, but at the same time, he looks like he's starting to turn around, and I'm definitely plugging Carroll in all of my lineups.
Yeah, it's one of those guys that we talked about that's just like you have to just like at some point you just have to believe in someone who's done it before, and he's one of those guys. So I love that for you. I fully agree. So is there anyone else? Anything else you got going on?
Go Parker Meadows.
Go Parker Meadows. Seattle's they're a dark horse, like World Series favorite.
I agree with you.
I mean, the 4 pitchers they're going to throw at you in a series.
There's no better four. There's no better four.
Kirby, Wu, Castillo, and
Gilbert.
Who am I blanking on? Gilbert. I mean, it's stupid. And then their offense, I really think, is just got to lift. Like I think just with the Rosarena and Turner, and then obviously it makes everyone better. Julio and Cal and all these. Man, this team, they're my World Series favorite right now.
It's going to be hard. So there are 3 games. I don't know if you look at the standings. There are 3 games out of the wild card right now, half game out of their division. So that means either them or Houston is likely to potentially miss.
Right. It's true.
That's unless they can.
It's one of those teams Kansas that like you could get a good number for them on the World Series because there's a chance they miss the playoffs. Yeah. But if they make the playoffs, they're going to win the. So that's like a good bet, probably a good long odds bet, because if they make the playoffs, they're my dark horse favorite to win it all.
And I bet their odds are significantly better.
That's what I'm saying.
Than Houston's or
exactly.
Yeah. Even though it's only a half game difference right now, it could be tied by the end of today. Yeah, I love that.
You know what? Let me look. You got me curious. Let's go to MLB futures bets. You ready?
Yeah, I'd love to see it because I'm looking at the standings. Kansas City could hang around. Minnesota, I think, both of those teams. Seattle could just get on a hot streak and jump one of them. Boston's around there. I don't think Tampa's legit anymore. I think they're done. So they're kind of that last cut before teams really start to fall off. So it's kind of now or never. The Cubs, I think, are in a similar spot with Cincinnati close behind them. 3 games out of the playoffs right now.
World Series odds. The Astros are plus 1,300.
Okay.
Seattle, I don't even see it. Seattle's plus 2,500, so double basically the odds.
That's
a great value.
Good value right there, yeah.
Like Baltimore's plus 750, Yankees are plus 550, Phillies plus 550, and Dodgers are obviously the favorite at plus 370. But then the Guardians are plus 1,200, Astros are plus 1,300. Like they're all in the same range. Minnesota plus 1,200, Padres plus 1,500. And 2,500 for Seattle. I mean, that is great value. I might bet that tonight. All right. Until next time, like, subscribe. We're giving you gambling advice in addition to fantasy advice. Gamble responsibly. Until next time, like, subscribe, share the pod with your friends. See ya. All right. Coming up on the Just Fantasy Baseball podcast, we love self-fulfilling prophecies on this show, so we give you a couple of them. Plus, when guys have shown you that they can be great at times, it's worth it to continue to bet on them. I'll explain. And also, there's a pitcher coming off of an injury for a contending team, and he could be right in the middle of that rotation. Really solid. So all that and a whole lot more coming up on the Just Fantasy Baseball podcast. Stay tuned.